questions?
I would.
All right,
Thank you
the
very
floor is
much.
yours. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you very much, Ms. Sines, for your story and for being willing to come forward. Do you believe that we need to put in place mechanisms to require online platforms to immediately take down non-consensual and intimate images?
Thank you, Senator. I absolutely do agree. As I mentioned in my testimony earlier, what happens if my photos were to be publicly posted? Again, do I think that big tech would have my back and immediately take it down? No, never. So we absolutely need this in place so companies, as soon as they see these images, they're immediately taken down. That saves the victim a lot of shame. Imagine you are back in middle school or you're back in high school and now everybody has a cell phone. You can get on the web at any time. You can screenshot, screen record, share it. Those images aren't just circulating by the predators online, they're circulating through these children's schools.
Yes, exactly. And I thank my colleagues for their work on this important bill. I actually wanted to ask about an additional bill, Mr. Tanego, and that is both Senator Cornyn and I have the SHIELD Act, and Senator Cruz and I have the Take It Down Act, which was actually referred to at the State of the Union, and the First Lady has done a press event supporting the bill. In your written testimony, you called for the codification of a notice and takedown regime in federal law. As you know, these bills create a mechanism through which platforms are required to remove sexual abuse materials from their sites. And it is unanimously, the Take It Down Act has unanimously passed, SHIELD Act passed. Why is it so important that Congress pass into law a requirement that platforms permanently remove sexual abuse imagery from the internet?
Well, thank you so much for that question. I think we've heard from a very brave survivor today about the harm that is done to survivors when their abuse material continues to circulate online. And I think it shouldn't be the responsibility of survivors to have to scour the internet looking for images and videos of their abuse and then repeatedly requesting companies to take it down. I think once they have asked a company to take down their CSAM, the company should absolutely do it, and there should be a law that requires them to do it so that it's not voluntary. But after that, that company is on notice. They know that that image or that video is known CSAM, and they can use technology to prevent the recirculation and re-uploading of that image ever again, and that's what should be required of them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schiller, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota has prioritized combating child sexual exploitation online. In fact, just last month, after an investigation with federal law enforcement, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and the Winona County Sheriff's Office, a man was sentenced to 27 years in prison after targeting more than 60 young girls, primarily between ages 9 and 12, in an online extortion scheme. Based on your experience as a former AUSA, what are the most effective tools that prosecutors currently have to stop the sexual exploitation of kids online, and what are the biggest challenges?
Well, thank you very much, Senator. This Congress and past Congresses have given us wonderful tools when it comes to laws punishing online offenders. We have minimum mandatories. We have online exploitation communities that we can prosecute, and we've got great criminal statutes to do that. But that's only one side of it. We need other tools. And to be honest with you, the Stop CSAM Act gives us some of those other tools. For example, I've had cases where I've had children who were abused by their parents or by other people who are guarding them. They have no guard at all, so we had to get them a guardian ad litem. That becomes a difficult process when the courts have no funding for it. The courts are already strapped as it is financially, so this bill gives them that funding and guarantees those children that protection. Okay. And one other thing that we heard earlier from Mr. Tanego is having a fiduciary. If we have victims outside of our country or incapacitated victims, they need to be able to maintain that restitution when it is finally awarded to them. And this bill, again, does that for them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pizarro. Last question here. And I did have some questions on reporting of you, Ms. DeLon, but I think Senator Blackburn took care of those. So, Mr. Pizarro, Could you tell me why it's so important to open the courtroom doors and reform Section 230 for those who suffer harms, like the two boys who you described in your testimony?
Well, like the reality is that, again, we've talked about this a while. There's not any penalties, right? So until there are penalties and people have their time in court for that victimization, how are we going to protect them? And ultimately, that's what companies understand. They understand as long as it's not going to cost them, it's a business decision. Ultimately, that is what's going to happen. And ultimately, that's what needs to happen.
Okay, thank you. And I thank the two leaders up here with me as well. Thank you. Thanks, all of you.
I think we've got Senator